It happened on a Tuesday in late October, the kind of day where the cold sets in just deep enough that you feel it in your teeth. I still remember the sky. It was that brittle kind of blue that comes right before winter starts choking the color out of everything. I was at work when it started. My wife, Carrie, was home with our 2 kids, Eli, who was 9, and June, just 5. We lived in a modest ranch-style house tucked in a dying subdivision outside Knoxville, Tennessee. It wasn't much, but it was ours. At least, it had been. I got the call around 2:15 p.m. It was my neighbor, Greg. He said, "Your house is on fire. The whole damn roof's going." I could hear the sirens screaming in the background. By the time I got there, I couldn't see the sky anymore. Just black smoke and the orange shimmer of flames licking up the siding. Carrie was out front with the kids, wrapped in a blanket, her face the color of paper. The firefighters were still trying to put it out, but I could already tell it was gone. Everything was gone. They said it was electrical. Some short behind the old dryer in the laundry room. One spark. That's all it took. We didn't have insurance. Not the good kind, anyway. Barely enough to cover a week in a cheap motel, and certainly not enough to rebuild. I'd lost my job 6 months earlier and was scraping by doing part-time shifts at a delivery warehouse. We were already drowning. The fire just finished us off. That first night, we slept in the car. It was cold, even with the windows up, and the kids kept crying in their sleep. I held Carrie's hand under the blanket, and we didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. By the end of the week, the car broke down too. That's when we made the decision. We packed what we had, some clothes, a few canned goods, my old camping stove, and walked into the woods behind what used to be our neighborhood. There was a state forest back there, miles of pine and birch and rotting leaves, and I knew the trails from when I was a kid. We thought it'd be temporary. A few days. Maybe a week. Just until we figured something out. But we were still there when the first snow came. And that's when things started to change. We found a spot about a mile off the trail, far enough that no one would stumble on us by accident. It was a little clearing surrounded by old trees, their branches twisted like they'd been trying to crawl away from something. There was a shallow stream nearby and enough fallen limbs to keep a fire going, at least at first. The tent was from my dad's hunting gear, canvas, moldy, barely held together. It fit the 4 of us if we slept shoulder to shoulder. We set it up on a bed of pine needles and used garbage bags filled with leaves as makeshift insulation. Eli tried to act tough. He even joked the first night, calling it our great adventure. But June never stopped staring into the woods. Even when she was supposed to be sleeping, I'd find her eyes wide open, following something I couldn't see. We rationed what food we had. Instant noodles. Peanut butter. The occasional fast food leftovers someone gave us in town. I'd walk the few miles back to the edge of civilization every other day, checking dumpsters, trying to get odd jobs, lifting pallets, cleaning gutters, that kind of thing. But the woods started getting to us. There were sounds at night. Not animals. Not wind. Not the normal forest noises. I've been camping enough in my life to know what those sound like. These were different. Carrie was the first to mention it. One night she whispered, "Do you hear that?" And I did. It was a clicking sound, like someone tapping sticks together, slow and deliberate, just beyond the tree line. Always the same rhythm. Click. Click. Pause. Click. Eli swore he saw someone standing between the trees one morning, said it was a man with a gray hoodie and bare feet, just watching us. I told him it was probably a hiker, maybe someone else living rough out there. But when I followed the direction Eli pointed in, all I found were prints in the frost. Bare footprints. No shoes. No socks. Just raw skin pressed into the cold mud. They led nowhere. We started keeping the fire going all night, taking turns sleeping in shifts. I didn't tell Carrie, but I started carrying a hatchet with me, tucked in my coat. And still, the noises got closer. The clicking didn't stop. The footprints came back. And then one morning, June was gone. I don't remember falling asleep that night. I'd been up with the fire, staring into the trees like always, listening for the clicks. Carrie had taken June inside the tent a little earlier than usual because she'd been shivering uncontrollably, even wrapped in 2 layers and pressed between warm bodies. When I opened my eyes, the fire was out. The tent was zipped open. And June was gone. Carrie's scream cut through the woods like a shotgun blast. Eli woke up crying, asking where his sister was, his voice cracking in a way that will haunt me until the day I die. We searched in every direction. For hours. Calling her name, over and over. No answer. Not even an echo. The forest seemed quiet. Too quiet. Like it had swallowed the sound. Then Eli pointed to a spot near the stream. There, etched in the dirt, was that same pattern of footprints, bare, small, impossibly small. Like a child's. But they weren't June's. They were too long, the toes oddly spread, like something trying to imitate human feet, but not quite getting it right. And they were headed into the thicket, where the trees grew close and the light barely touched the ground. We followed. We shouldn't have. After maybe 30 minutes of pushing through branches and frostbitten brush, we found this depression in the earth, like an old sinkhole. It was perfectly round, maybe 6 feet across, rimmed in moss and dead leaves. And in the center was June's favorite stuffed animal, her ragged old bear, the one she never let go of, even when she slept. It was propped upright, sitting like someone had placed it there intentionally. And on the bear's stomach someone, or something, had drawn a symbol in ash. Just 3 slashes. Simple, like claw marks. But they weren't smudged or messy. They were deliberate. Ritualistic. Carrie grabbed the bear and screamed into the hole. "Where is she?" The sound echoed. Then it echoed again. And again. But each time, it came back just a little off, like someone was mimicking her voice with a delay, whispering it back with too much breath in their lungs. We ran. I didn't care if we left our stuff behind. I just grabbed Eli, Carrie clutching that damn bear, and we sprinted back to camp. Only when we returned, the tent was torn down. Our things were scattered. And the hatchet? Gone. That night we didn't sleep. None of us. We huddled around the fire, all 3 of us, our backs to each other like we were waiting for wolves. Carrie kept the bear clutched to her chest, staring into the dark like June might walk out of it at any moment. But I could tell by her eyes she knew better. Something had taken our daughter. And whatever it was, it had been watching us for a long time. The next few days blurred together. We tried going into town, to the sheriff's office. Told them our daughter had gone missing in the woods. They sent out a search team, sure, but I could tell they didn't take us seriously. We were just another homeless family. Probably irresponsible. Probably high. They walked the trails, called her name. Found nothing. Not the sinkhole. Not the bear. Not the footprints. They even suggested maybe June wandered off and got lost, implied, not so subtly, that we were to blame. That night, when we came back to camp, everything had been neatly stacked. Our tent poles. The sleeping bags. Even our canteen. And right in the middle? The hatchet. It was driven into the center of a tree stump. Buried deep. Deeper than I could have done with one swing. And tied to the handle, using a length of vine, was a piece of paper, yellowed, stained, torn at the edges. It was folded in half, but there was no writing on it. Just another drawing. 3 slashes. Again. But this time, below them, someone had scrawled something crude in what looked like charcoal. A single word. Return. Carrie didn't speak for hours after that. Not a word. Eli wouldn't leave her side. I sat by the fire until morning, staring at the hatchet in the stump. I didn't pull it out. I didn't touch the paper. The next night, we heard something move through the camp. Not around it. Through it. We never saw it. Just the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling, crunching frost and leaves, brushing canvas and bark. And the smell. God, the smell. Like meat left in a cooler for too long. sweet and rotting and wet. Then it was gone. And in its place, carved into the side of a tree, were those 3 slashes again, deep, oozing sap like blood. We weren't just being watched. We were being warned. I started marking the trees around camp. Chalk, little fabric ties, anything I could use to track if they were being moved or replaced. I know how that sounds. Like I was losing it. But things didn't stay where we left them. Not just our gear, but the forest itself. Paths curved differently. Fallen logs weren't in the same place from day to day. Trees we'd marked were sometimes just gone. And the symbols, those 3 claw marks, they started showing up on more than just the trees. They were scratched into the stones near the fire pit, etched faintly into our cookware. Once, I woke up to find one drawn in ash across Eli's chest, as if someone, or something, had marked him while he slept. We left again, tried to go back into town, begged for help. I even cornered one of the deputies who'd been on the search team. Told him everything, about the footprints, the sounds at night, the sinkhole, the drawings. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "You people need to get the hell out of those woods." I asked him what he meant. He just shook his head. "There've been others," he said. "Kids go missing out there more than you'd think. But it's never the same story. Never the same details. Only thing they have in common is the woods. And the fact they never come back." I asked if anyone ever found anything. His face went flat. "Once," he said. 6 years ago. Little boy disappeared during a camping trip. His mom said she saw someone standing in the trees, watching them. A few days later, we found the kid's jacket hanging from a tree limb, 40 feet off the ground. He leaned in closer then. Whispered. No one could figure out how it got up there. No ladder, no broken branches. Like it just floated. Carrie didn't want to go back. She begged me to take Eli and just keep walking. Find a shelter in another county. Start over. But I couldn't leave June. I couldn't just go. So we went back to camp. But something was waiting. The fire was out. The tent was gone. And the trees were covered in marks. Not just the slashes anymore. There were faces now. Carved into the bark. Crude, wide-mouthed, hollow-eyed faces. All of them screaming. And every single one was turned toward our clearing. We stood there, frozen, just staring at those faces in the trees. Dozens of them. Maybe more. Each one looked like it had been gouged out with something dull. The lines were ragged, the eyes too big, like whoever, or whatever, carved them had never seen a human face up close. Or maybe it had, and remembered it wrong. Carrie started crying again. Not loud, just this slow, leaking kind of sob. The kind that sounds like it's coming from somewhere deep, like it had been waiting days to come out. Eli clutched my arm. His nails were digging into my jacket, and I realized he was trembling. I wanted to tell him we'd be okay. That I had a plan. But I didn't even know what was real anymore. That night we didn't sleep. We sat around a cold fire pit, huddled together, listening to the trees breathe around us. Because that's what it sounded like now, like the forest had lungs. Like it was waiting to exhale. Then, around 3 a.m., we heard the dragging. Not footsteps this time. Something heavy, being pulled across the forest floor. Slow. Rhythmic. Leaves and branches cracking under its weight. And mixed in with it, breathing. Not human breathing. It was wet, labored. Almost like someone trying to suck air through a cracked throat. It circled the clearing. Once. Twice. And then it stopped. Right behind Carrie. I moved before I thought, spun around with the hatchet raised, ready to swing. But there was nothing. Just trees. Fog. A patch of disturbed earth where the leaves had been swept aside. Like something had crawled up to her, then vanished. That was when I saw the handprint. Pressed into the dirt, clear as day. Long fingers. But not 5. 6. Each one ending in a dull point, not quite a claw, not quite a nail. I didn't say a word. I just sat back down, pulling Carrie and Eli close. And that's when Eli whispered, "It was in my dream again." I asked him what he meant. He said, "The man with the bag face. He doesn't blink. He watches from the trees. He says if we give him something back, he'll let us leave." I didn't want to ask. But I did. I said, "Give what back?" Eli didn't answer. He just pointed to the stuffed bear, still clutched in Carrie's lap, and said, "June." I didn't sleep after that. Not even a blink. I just sat there, listening to Eli breathe, watching Carrie rock that stuffed bear like she was trying to keep something inside from breaking loose. The woods were silent again, but it wasn't peaceful, it was expectant. Like we were being timed. Like something was counting down. The next morning, I tried to talk to Carrie. Told her we needed to go, now. I didn't care about the tent or the gear or even the trail. We'd cut straight through the brush if we had to, hitchhike on the highway, whatever it took. She nodded, slowly. Then she said something I didn't expect. "He took her because we were going to leave." I froze. She was staring off into the trees, eyes wide but glassy, like she wasn't fully here anymore. "She told me," Carrie whispered. "Last week. June said there was a man outside. Said he was sad. Said he wanted to play." I didn't believe her. I asked her if she thought it was real. She didn't answer. Just hugged the bear tighter. We packed up what we could, mostly the clothes, some matches, a cracked pot. I left the hatchet in the stump. I didn't want to touch it again. It felt like a tether, something that connected us to him. The man Eli saw in his dreams. The one with the bag face. We started walking before the sun fully rose. The light was gray, sickly. The forest didn't look like it had the day before. Everything felt closer. The trees pressed in tighter. The trail didn't lead where I remembered it going. At one point, I swear we circled the same rotten log 3 times. I marked it with a rock the first time. It was still there the third. Then Carrie stopped. She said, "He won't let us leave unless we make it right." I grabbed her hand. Told her we weren't making any deals. We were getting out. She looked down at the bear. And then she dropped it. I didn't notice at first. Not until Eli gasped. The bear lay in the dirt, face up. And then it moved. Only a little. Just a twitch. But I saw it. Something inside the fabric shifted. And then a voice, faint, distant, like it came from a hallway with no end, whispered, "Almost." Carrie screamed. And from somewhere, deep in the woods, we heard an answering scream. But it wasn't June. It was wrong. Too deep. Too wide. Like something opening its mouth for the first time in centuries. I picked up the bear. I shouldn't have. I knew I shouldn't have. But something in me needed to. Maybe it was instinct, or just desperation. The fabric was warm. Damp. It shouldn't have been. I turned it over and felt a lump inside the seam along its back, like something had been stitched in after the fact. I wanted to tear it open. Wanted to see if there was something, anything, of June left. But then Eli screamed. I turned and saw him pointing at the trees. There were figures now. Not moving. Just standing. Dozens of them. Thin. Still. Blending into the bark and shadow, but unmistakably there. You could see them if you didn't look directly, like they lived in the corner of your vision, where the forest blurred and throbbed. Each one wore something over their head, cloth, burlap, or maybe skin. All stitched or tied tight around the neck. No eyes. No mouths. Just silent, watching shapes. I pulled Carrie and Eli back. We walked slowly, never turning our backs. But the trail was gone again. Just trees and fog. Then we saw the tree. It was massive. Too big to have been missed before. Bark black as coal, gnarled like veins under sick skin. And carved into its trunk, over and over again, were the same 3 slashes. At its base was a hollow. Just large enough for a child to crawl through. And something inside was glowing. Carrie dropped to her knees. "I hear her," she said. "She's calling me." I didn't hear anything at first. Just the blood pounding in my ears. Then, a voice. Very faint. Mommy! But it didn't sound right. It sounded flattened. Like a recording being played backward through a tunnel. Carrie crawled forward. I grabbed her arm, begged her not to go in. She turned to me and said, "She's cold. I can feel it. We have to give her back." I said, "We never took her." She looked at me like I didn't understand. And maybe I didn't. Because I still don't know what that thing in the tree was. But I know what it wanted. And I know what it took. I held Carrie by the arm as tightly as I could, but she wasn't fighting me. She was shaking, no, quivering, like something inside her was being pulled apart thread by thread. She kept whispering June's name, like a prayer or a curse, and each time she said it, that glow inside the hollow pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Then Eli stepped forward. He didn't look scared anymore. He looked resigned. "I'll go," he said quietly. "No," I said immediately. "No, you won't." But he just looked up at me and said, "She's still in there. She's waiting." Then he looked at Carrie. "She said we didn't mean to. That we were supposed to leave together." I grabbed him, held him close, but the bear, that damn bear, was still in my hand, and it twitched again. This time I felt it. Felt something inside it move. That was when it clicked. Whatever took June, it hadn't just stolen her. It had anchored itself to us. Through the bear. Through the woods. Through grief. We had stayed too long. We'd fed it our fear. Our pain. We had nourished it. And now it wanted more. Carrie suddenly pulled free of me and started crawling toward the hollow again. I shouted for her to stop, but she didn't even flinch. It was like she wasn't in control anymore. Just going through the motions of something she'd already agreed to in a dream. And as she reached the edge of the hollow, a hand came out. Small. Pale. It was June's hand. Carrie sobbed and reached for it. And as soon as they touched, the light went out. Everything, the glow, the voices, the warmth, it vanished like someone had yanked a plug from the earth. I screamed. Dove forward. But the hollow was empty. Carrie was gone. June was gone. Only the bear remained, lying limp in the dirt. I turned to Eli. He wasn't crying. He just looked tired. And he said, "We gave her back. That's what he wanted." I asked him, "Who is he?" Eli looked past me. Into the trees. "He was never a man," he whispered. "He just wears the face of one." We left the woods the next morning. Not because we found a path, or because something let us go. We left because we had nothing else to give. Carrie was gone. June was gone. And whatever had taken them, it had eaten its fill. Eli and I walked in silence for what felt like hours. No compass, no sense of direction, just moving. But eventually, the forest thinned. The trees stopped pressing so close. The air warmed, if only slightly. By afternoon, we stumbled out onto a two-lane road. A truck driver picked us up. Said we looked like we'd crawled out of a grave. I didn't argue. We stayed in a shelter for a few weeks. Then a church helped us find temporary housing. I picked up work again. Warehouse. Nights. Eli, he doesn't sleep much. Neither do I. He draws now. Always in black ink. Always trees. And sometimes, in the background, if you look close enough, you'll see them. The figures. Still. Watching. Sometimes they're behind the trees. Sometimes behind us. He never talks about Carrie or June. Not directly. But sometimes I'll hear him whispering in his sleep. Just one word. Return. I burned the bear. Tried to anyway. It took longer than it should have. It screamed when it caught. I buried the ashes under concrete. Poured it myself. But every now and then, I find the 3 slashes again, on a mirror, on the underside of a plate, once even inside the frost on our window. Always the same. 3 marks. No more, no less. I don't think it's over. Whatever that thing was, it's not finished. We walked out of the woods, but part of it walked out with us. And I think, when it's hungry again, it'll come back for the rest.